New York City's Mayor Zohran Mamdani flexed his political muscle last night. CBS News now projects all three candidates endorsed by the Democratic Socialists will win their primaries. Brad Lander currently has a comfortable lead over two-term Congressman Dan Goldman in New York's 10th district. Daria Liza Chevalier is the projected winner in the District 13 race. And in Congressional District 7, Claire Valdez is projected to replace Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. In Manhattan's hotly contested District 12 race, Jerry Nadler endorsed Michael Lasher. He's projected to win, defeating Jack Schlossberg, who's related to the Kennedys. And in South Carolina, the state's Attorney General, Alan Wilson, is projected to advance to the general election after yesterday's runoff there. President Trump initially endorsed his opponent, but then announced he's backing both Republicans a few days ago. CBS News political director Fin Gómez joins us now from our Washington bureau to discuss this. Fin, good morning. Great to see you. Let's start in New York, where we're looking at a big win for Mayor Mamdani and his political capital, really. But what difference does this make for folks across the country?
Now, Errol, that is a great question, and you're right, you're absolutely right. This was a clean sweep, a big win for the progressive mayor of New York City. All three candidates Mamdani endorsed won their Democratic House primaries, and two of them knocked off sitting congressional incumbents, Brad Lander, while Congressman Dan Goldman in the 10th and in the 13th. Democratic Socialist Daria Liza Avila Chevalier ousted Congressman Adriano Espaillat, who is the chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And she did so even after resurfaced social media posts drew heavy scrutiny from her critics, including ones that attacked Kamala Harris in some choice words, and also those that called for abolishing ICE. That's the kind of attack fodder, I think, Errol, that wouldn't sink her in a deep blue primary. But Republicans that I've spoke to since last night say they will absolutely revive that in the fall. And as you mentioned, Claire Valdez took the Brooklyn Queens seat. Valdez, also another DSA challenger. Mamdani is now a kingmaker in his city, and he did it over the objections and the obstacles laid in front of him by some in House Democratic leadership. Espaillat, for instance, was endorsed by Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries behind and had his support behind him, but that didn't matter. Here's what the mayor had to say last night about these wins.
And it is because you poured your hearts into this, because you poured your hopes into this, that we are showing there is a new path for politics in our city and in our country.
Well, one thing that we have seen over the last few weeks in some of these DSA wins outside of just New York, we saw some in Washington, D.C. as well, but these wins came in deep blue districts, Errol, where Mamdani ran strongest. Republicans that I spoke to last night they're already itching to nationalize these wins and use that Democratic Socialist label in the swing seats that actually decide who controls the House. These New York congressional districts will not really impact the overall balance of power when it comes to November. So the question really is, Errol, for the party isn't whether the energy is there, but if that energy that we saw last night in New York travels to some of these battleground districts.
Yeah, does this translate elsewhere? Fin, you've also got some reporting on Latino voters. This is a key voting bloc, but by no means monolithic. What role might they play come November?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Errol. Look, and I think this ties directly to last night. Remember that incumbent Mamdani's pick just beat Espaillat, DAC, Avila Chevalier, who was the first member of Congress who'd been an undocumented immigrant and chair of the Hispanic Caucus. So what you saw in that specific race in the 13th that has a high percentage of Latino voters, the significance of Latino votes. So that the question about Latino political power is one that's being contested inside the Democratic Party and not just between the parties. If you look to November, there's our new reporting that we have. The Latinos are now the second largest voting bloc in the country, as we know, and both sides say they're up for grabs. We went to the Latino Voter Summit yesterday in Washington, D.C., and this was a big topic of conversation. If you recall, Trump won 48% of Latino voters in 2024, which is up 12 points from 2020. But that trend looks like it's reversing, with most Latinos now disapproving of his handling of the economy, according to our CBS CBS News polling, and his approval among Latino voters has slid to around like 38%. So the catch for Democrats is it's not that they aren't closing the deal. There's a new bipartisan Unidos poll that has 50% planning to vote for Democrats. And what we're seeing from the experts that we spoke to yesterday at this Latino Voter Summit, it's really that the economy and affordability remain the dominant issue. They're also seeing some data and trend lines to 2018. And in those midterms, if you recall, it was the highest voter turnout by Latino voters and helped push in a blue wave election for Democrats that cycle. Errol.
Some fascinating data points there. Finn, kicking off our hour from Washington. Finn, thank you. We jump now to CBS News correspondent Skyler Henry. He has more on the South Carolina runoff. Good morning, Skyler. So how did State Attorney General Alan Wilson pull off this win, and how might this be relevant nationally?
Yeah, Errol, good morning. It was a groundswell of support over the course of the last several weeks as Wilson built this coalition of support from not only those that he beat back in June 9th in the initial primary contest, but really working that ground game and really leaning into his political campaign over the course of the last several weeks, of course, earning the co-endorsement of President Trump over the weekend. That is notable because the president initially only endorsed who he beat out, that is the Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott, who many viewed as the front runner in this contest coming off of what we saw on June 9th. I think when looking back on what potentially may have happened over the course of the last several weeks is that many in South Carolina were critical of what Abbott had to say on the campaign trail, namely what she would do in terms of naming a lieutenant governor. Many questioned what that looks like as far as her ability to operate as a CEO type figure in the Palmetto State. Others questioned some of her policies, and others simply said that it was not enough ground game in such a short amount of time, and perhaps her campaign relied too heavily on that initial Trump endorsement as well. But for the State Attorney General Alan Wilson, he now is moving forward with the momentum. It truly is an incredible feat what we saw over the course of the last several weeks, earning those endorsements from all of those figures. We should point out the Republican Senator Tim Scott also threw his support behind Wilson as well. But that last-minute Trump endorsement really could have potentially changed the game for him. Take a listen to what Wilson had to say last night.
I also want to give a shout out to President Trump. I was honored to receive his endorsement. He co-endorsed me late last week. I think he saw the fight that in our campaign, the energy in our campaign. And I think he likes a fighter, and I think that's what won him over. I want to thank you, Mr. President.
And so Wilson will now go up against the state representative Jermaine Johnson in November. He is the Democratic nominee. Errol.
All right, Skyler Henry, live for us in Atlanta this morning. Skyler, thank you.